You've been eating less. You've been moving more. You've cut out sugar, tried keto, tried intermittent fasting, dragged yourself to the gym even when you were exhausted. And the scale still won't budge. Or maybe it goes down a little and then it creeps right back up the moment you breathe wrong. And people around you, maybe even your doctor, have suggested that maybe you're just not trying hard enough, that maybe you just need a more discipline, more willpower, more effort. If that sounds familiar, I need you to hear this. It is not your fault. Because if you have PCOS, Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, your body is working against you in ways that have nothing to do with willpower. There are real, documented biological mechanisms that make weight loss harder, slower, and more complicated for women with this condition. And until you understand what's actually happening inside your body, no diet plan in the world is going to fix it. So today we're going to talk about what's really going on, not the generic eat clean and exercise advice you've already heard 100 times. We're going to get into the actual science in plain language so that you finally have answers. And then we're going to talk about what actually works. Let's start at the beginning. PCOS stands for Polycystic Ovary Syndrome, and despite the name, it's not really just about your ovaries. It's a hormonal and metabolic disorder that affects somewhere between 1 in 8 and 1 in 10 women of reproductive age. That means millions of women are walking around with this condition, many of them undiagnosed or misdiagnosed for years. The polycystic part refers to small fluid-filled follicles that can appear on the ovaries, but not every woman with PCOS actually has cysts, and not every woman with ovarian cysts has PCOS. The name is honestly misleading, and a lot of doctors and researchers wish they could rebrand the whole condition. What PCOS really is a hormonal imbalance. Your body produces too much of certain hormones, particularly androgens, which are often called male hormones, but are present in all bodies. And this imbalance throws off your entire system. Your menstrual cycle gets disrupted. Your metabolism gets disrupted. Your skin, your mood, your energy levels, your fertility, all of it gets pulled out of balance. And here's the thing that nobody tells you at your first appointment. PCOS is not one size fits all. There are actually different phenotypes, different presentations of the condition, which is why some women with PCOS struggle with weight while others don't. Some women have irregular periods but no excess hair growth. Some have insulin resistance but normal-looking ovaries on an ultrasound. The condition is a spectrum, and that's part of why it's so often mismanaged. But let's talk about the weight piece, because that's why you're here. For many women with PCOS, the single biggest driver of weight gain and weight resistance is insulin resistance. And this is where everything starts to make sense, and also where a lot of standard diet advice starts to fall apart. Here's how insulin is supposed to work. When you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises, your pancreas releases insulin to help your cells absorb that glucose for energy. Normally, the cells respond well. The glucose gets absorbed, blood sugar comes back down, insulin levels drop, and everything is balanced. But when you have insulin resistance, which affects up to 70% of women with PCOS, your cells don't respond properly to insulin. They become essentially deaf to its signal. So your pancreas has to pump out more and more insulin just to get the job done. And all that excess insulin in your bloodstream causes problems. First, high insulin tells your body to store fat, especially around your abdomen, not to burn it, to store it. So even if you're in a calorie deficit, if your insulin levels are chronically elevated, your body is being told at a hormonal level to hang on to its fat stores. Second, high insulin drives up your hunger. It messes with the hormones that tell your brain you're full, particularly leptin, the satiety hormone. So you might eat a full meal and still feel hungry an hour later. And people look at that and say, you have no self-control when really your hunger hormones are completely dysregulated. Third, insulin resistance makes your blood sugar less stable. You get highs and crashes, and those crashes feel terrible. They feel like urgency, like you have to eat right now. And what your body craves in those moments? Fast-acting carbs and sugar. The very things that spike insulin again and restart the whole cycle. This is why some women with PCOS will do everything they're supposed to do and still gain weight or struggle to lose even a pound. The standard advice, eat less, exercise more, maintain a calorie deficit, ignores the fact that for insulin-resistant women, hormones are actively working against that process. And here's the thing about trying to eat less when you're insulin resistant. Extreme calorie restriction can actually make insulin resistance worse over time. It stresses your body, and when your body is stressed, it releases cortisol, and cortisol brings its own set of problems. Let's talk about cortisol, because this is the piece that gets almost no attention in mainstream PCOS conversations, and it might be the most important thing you hear today. Cortisol is your body's primary stress hormone. It's released by your adrenal glands in response to any kind of stress, whether that's a genuinely threatening situation, a difficult conversation at work, a traffic jam, a bad night of sleep, or yes, skipping meals or undereating. In small doses, cortisol is helpful. It gives you energy, it sharpens your focus, it gets you through hard situations. But many women with PCOS have chronically elevated cortisol because their lives are stressful, because PCOS itself is stressful, because they've been on back-to-back restrictive diets that their body interprets as a famine. Here's what chronic elevated cortisol does to your body. It raises blood sugar because cortisol is designed to give you quick energy in an emergency. That blood sugar rise then triggers more insulin. More insulin means more fat storage and more hunger. And then cortisol also directly promotes fat storage in the abdominal area, that stubborn belly fat that so many women with PCOS struggle with. Cortisol also disrupts your sleep, and poor sleep raises cortisol even further, and disrupted sleep raises your hunger hormones, specifically ghrelin, which makes you hungrier, while suppressing leptin, which makes you feel full. So after a bad night of sleep, you are genuinely hungrier, genuinely less satisfied by food, and your body is actively trying to store more fat. This is not a personal failing. This is biology. The connection between stress, cortisol, and PCOS weight gain is so significant that some researchers believe chronic stress may actually be a trigger for worsening PCOS symptoms overall, not just weight. And for women who are already dealing with the emotional weight of feeling like their body is broken, feeling ashamed at doctor's appointments, feeling like they've failed at yet another diet, that emotional stress is real and it has real physiological consequences. Now let's talk about androgens, specifically testosterone and DHEAS, because these hormones play a really specific role in how and where your body stores fat. Women with PCOS typically have elevated androgen levels, and one of the things elevated androgens do is change your body's fat distribution pattern. Instead of storing fat preferentially around the hips and thighs, the typical female pattern, elevated androgens push fat toward the abdomen and upper body. This visceral fat, the fat that sits around your internal organs, is metabolically different from subcutaneous fat. It's more inflammatory, it's more hormonally active, and it actually makes insulin resistance worse because visceral fat releases fatty acids directly into the portal vein, which leads to your liver and affects how your liver processes insulin. In other words, the fat distribution pattern driven by elevated androgens actually creates a feedback loop that worsens insulin resistance, which promotes more fat storage, which worsens androgens. It's a cycle that keeps reinforcing itself, and you can't break it just by cutting calories. Elevated androgens also affect your muscle mass. Paradoxically, women with PCOS can have slightly higher muscle mass in some areas, but the muscle is less metabolically efficient. It burns less glucose, which means more glucose stays in the bloodstream, which means more insulin is needed. And again, the cycle continues. This is why the shape of weight gain in PCOS is so distinctive, and why so many women describe feeling like they gain weight in one place, no matter what they eat, or like their body has completely changed since their PCOS symptoms started. Now I want to address something directly because I know so many of you have tried this. The typical approaches that get recommended, low-calorie diets and lots of cardio, can actually make PCOS worse. Not for everyone, but for many women, and here's why. When you severely restrict calories, your body reads that as a threat. Cortisol goes up. Cortisol raises blood sugar. Insulin goes up. Metabolism slows down because your body is trying to preserve energy, and you end up in a situation where you're eating less than you ever have, you're exhausted, you're hungry all the time, and you're still not losing weight. Or you lose a few pounds and immediately plateau. This is sometimes called metabolic adaptation, and it's real. When you chronically undereat, your thyroid downregulates, your muscle tissue breaks down to provide energy, and your resting metabolic rate drops. For women with PCOS who already have compromised metabolic function, this effect can be even more pronounced. And cardio, specifically long, intense cardio sessions like running or cycling for an hour at high intensity, raises cortisol significantly. If you're already cortisol dominant, which many women with PCOS are, piling on more cortisol spiking exercise just feeds the problem. It can increase inflammation, worsen insulin resistance, and leave you so exhausted and hungry after a workout that you inevitably eat more, undoing the calorie deficit you just created. Again, this is not you failing. This is your body responding appropriately to an approach that wasn't designed for your hormonal reality. So, what does work? What's actually shown to help women with PCOS lose weight and feel better? Let's start with food. The most evidence-backed dietary approach for PCOS is not the strictest one. It's not the most aggressive one. It's a lower glycemic, anti-inflammatory eating pattern that stabilizes blood sugar without tanking your metabolism. This means focusing on whole foods, vegetables, legumes, quality protein, healthy fats, and lower sugar fruits. It means pairing carbohydrates with protein and fat to slow glucose absorption. It means eating enough, not starving yourself, because chronic restriction raises cortisol and makes everything worse. It doesn't mean zero carbs. In fact, many women with PCOS do better with some complex carbohydrates because going completely carb-free can stress the adrenal system and spike cortisol. What matters is the type of carbs and how they're paired, not the elimination of an entire macronutrient. The research on the Mediterranean diet for PCOS is particularly strong. It's rich in fiber, healthy fats like olive oil and nuts, lean proteins, and anti-inflammatory foods. It's also sustainable long-term, which matters because no dietary approach works if you can't maintain it. For exercise, strength training is one of the most powerful tools available for women with PCOS. Here's why. Muscle tissue is insulin sensitive. The more muscle you have, the better your cells respond to insulin. Strength training, lifting weights, resistance bands, bodyweight exercises, builds muscle, improves insulin sensitivity, and does not spike cortisol the way prolonged intense cardio does. You don't need to lift heavy every day. 2 to 3 sessions per week of progressive resistance training can make a measurable difference in insulin sensitivity within weeks. Walking is also genuinely beneficial. It lowers blood sugar, it's low cortisol, and it's sustainable. A 20-minute walk after meals can meaningfully blunt blood sugar spikes. Sleep is not a luxury. For women with PCOS, it's a metabolic intervention. Getting 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night regulates cortisol, rebalances hunger hormones, and improves insulin sensitivity. If sleep is a problem for you, which it often is with PCOS, treating the sleep issue is treating the weight issue. They're not separate. Stress management matters just as much as diet. This isn't about bubble baths and positive thinking. It's about genuinely reducing your cortisol load through things like yoga, breath work, therapy, reducing obligations, getting off the diet binge restrict cycle that keeps your body in a constant state of stress. On the supplement and medication side, a few things have real evidence behind them. Inositol, specifically myo-inositol, and D-chiroinositol has been shown in multiple studies to improve insulin sensitivity, lower androgens, and support ovulation in women with PCOS. It's available over the counter and has a very strong safety profile. Berberine is another supplement with good evidence for improving insulin sensitivity. Some studies suggest it performs comparably to metformin for blood sugar regulation. It's worth discussing with your doctor. And speaking of metformin, this is a prescription medication that directly addresses insulin resistance, and it's used widely for PCOS. If you haven't had a conversation with your doctor specifically about metformin and PCOS, it's worth asking. It's not for everyone, but for many women, it's a genuine game changer in terms of making their body more responsive to healthy lifestyle changes. I want to close with this because I think it's the most important thing I've said today. PCOS weight resistance is not a character flaw. It is not laziness. It is not a lack of discipline. It is a metabolic condition driven by insulin resistance, hormonal imbalance, cortisol dysregulation, and inflammatory dysfunction, and it requires a different approach than standard weight loss advice. If you've been told you just need to try harder, you deserve better than that. If you've been dismissed at doctor's appointments, you deserve better than that. If you've blamed yourself every time a diet didn't work, I want you to let that go, because the diet wasn't designed for your body. You are not broken. Your body is doing exactly what it was programmed to do given the hormonal environment it's operating in. And when you change that environment through blood sugar stability, stress reduction, strategic exercise, adequate sleep, and the right medical support, your body can change with it. It won't be overnight, it won't be linear, but it is possible, and you deserve to know that. If this video helped you, please share it with another woman who's been struggling and blaming herself. Subscribe for more content like this, and drop a comment below. I read every single one, and I want to hear what resonated with you. Take care of yourself. You deserve it.